Oh, shalom, shalom, my friends, shalom, my enemies. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And it is my pleasure and my delight to talk about something that is delightful to me, humor and comedy and funniness. And very lucky for me, it's not like I'm talking with Elie Wiesel here. I'm talking to an expert in comedy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a person who has been a script doctor, who has been a playwright, and more also of a director. He's been an artistic director of a comedy theater called Manhattan Punchline in New York. And then since then, he's gone on to work in Hollywood and in California, which are two different things, I guess. And he is the author of these two books, The Hidden Tools of Comedy, which is meaningful to me because I do comedy and people have called me a tool. And then there's The Comic Hero's Journey, which is the more recent book, both of them by Steve Kaplan, who also does seminars and things like that of a comedic nature. So before anything else, please welcome to the neighborhood, Mr. Steve Kaplan. Shalom, Steve.
Shalom, Rabbi. How are you doing?
How else does a Jew answer? You know,
I make a living.
Prostate trouble, eye trouble, you know, elbow. How are you? How are you? Know, you're not that young anymore. Do you have any issues? Any medical problems?
I do not have coronavirus. I can say that absolutely.
I have Manischewitz virus. This is a terrible thing that goes around. But you know what? When I get a Manischewitz virus, I don't whine about it. Get it? That's a little.
I got it.
You did get
Rabbi,
that.
You're
Now,
very funny.
Please explain to folks, though, that there's a difference between like a joke and actual comedy. I wish I could learn that difference, but from your perspective, what is the difference between just be a punchline or making somebody laugh versus the nature of discovering what comedy is?
Well, one of the things that we talk about is the fact that there's a difference between funny and comedy.
Okay.
Funny being whatever makes you laugh. I mean, if there's a baby and you have some keys and you shake the keys at the baby will laugh. But is that comedy? I mean, would Netflix give it millions of dollars to produce it as a series?
I would absolutely do that.
Well, probably Netflix would, but
or Hulu.
Comedy, performance comedy, comedy that you see in movies or television or stand-up, is usually about an ordinary person, a guy or a girl, who lacks some, if not all, the essential skills and tools which to win, yet never giving up hope. That's the basic equation. Right. For comedy. So I think the difference is that funny, you can make anybody laugh at anything at any time, but comedy is telling a story that contains both truth, humor, heart, and intellect.
Well, is that why, let's say you have a really, really funny play, like a Neil Simon play, or even a stand-up comedian, and they've got, let's say, a 55-minute set. And they can just kill for about 15, 20 minutes or so. And then there's just going to be this, no matter what you do, there's going to be this lull. They're not going to laugh as hard 25 minutes in as they are 5 minutes in. Is that just what sets in audiences? What happens there?
Well, you can't make somebody laugh continually for hours and hours because you just exhaust them. And so what needs to happen is that in every set, you need to have different tones, different colors, different modes. So if you, one of my favorite stand-ups of all time was George Carlin, and if you analyze a George Carlin comedy special, there would be his silly stuff. He would always open up with, you know what makes me angry, and he would just reel off a number of silly observations.
Right. But
then he would intersperse the silly stuff with stuff that is comedic, but might not even make you laugh because it's about something that he's angry about or passionate about, and the premise is comedic, but the point of it wasn't necessarily to tickle you moment after moment after moment, but to engage you, to enrage you, to...
I know from enraging people. I've done that. Believe me, I've enraged multitudes, actually. More than I've made laugh, quite honestly.
So Rabbi,
Yes.
you have a friend named Dave, right?
Oh, God, yeah.
And Dave is a stand-up comic, right?
Not especially. He's more of a comic writer and personality sort of thing.
Well...
I'm kind of an idiot, yeah.
One of the things that I think people don't understand about comedy is that comedy isn't necessarily trying to make you laugh every second. In fact, the comedy that usually fails is comedy that tries to make you laugh every second.
Okay.
The best comedy is telling you a story that not only amuses you, but moves you and makes you think. One of my favorite sitcoms of all time just ended the other night, The Good Place. And The Good Place was this sitcom that imagined that these 4 humans died and were brought to hell, and they were tortured, but in the course of torturing them, they became better people. And so the head demon in charge of torturing them decided to try to figure out how to make everybody a better person. And it combined low comedy with philosophy, and it was brilliant.
Where was this on TV? When did you see this?
This was last Thursday night. It was ran for 4 seasons. The Good Place with Kristen Bell and Ted Danson, written by Michael Schur.
And this was on regular. It's not a Netflix or a cable.
No, it was broadcast television.
Oh wow!
And it on a weekly basis, it brought up ethical philosophy and Kant and Hegel and Schopenhauer.
Yeah.
And and the amazing thing is that in the last episode, in which everybody kind of is moving on to their final reward, it was what comedy is supposed to do. It made you think, it made you feel, as well as making you laugh. So to me, the best comedy is comedy that tries to aspire to being great storytelling as well as fun.
All right, but here's the deal. You know,
Okay.
we mock sometimes the Hollywood for telling the same thing over and over, and the comedies are all the same, and they all that. Why is it though? People who know these rules and people who understand how to script a comedy still make some lousy comedies. You know, why is it a playwright, even Arthur Miller will write a work of genius and his next play sucks? Why does that happen? Because it happens.
Because it's not a machine. It's not an exact science. It's an art. And you can fail and you can screw up and you can try to do something different and it doesn't work, or sometimes you try to write something as seriously as you can and everybody laughs at it, and then you have to go, yeah, I meant it to be comedy. I think the important thing is that the way I look at it is rather than how come this comedy sucked, isn't it amazing that this movie, this play, this television show worked, because there's so many things that can work against it. So many things can go wrong that when something goes right,
yeah,
it's a miracle.
Miracles I know from. This is
Miracles.
now you're in my wheelhouse, ladies and gentlemen. But here's the question then. So some of the things you go.
Look at Casablanca. Casablanca was going to be starring, I think, either George Raft or Ronald Reagan. Well, how would that movie have been if they had cast it? They had cast it the way they wanted to. Humphrey Bogart was not their first choice, so it's almost amazing that anything works at all.
Yeah. Well. Here's the other thing. Then
Okay.
you have been asked this a lot of times. What is the one biggest mistake that screenwriters make, that TV writers make when they're writing comedy, and where you can predict, this is where they're going to go wrong. This is why it's not going to be a great movie. It's going to be a movie. What do they make the mistake of?
The biggest mistake is not trusting the audience to care, and not trusting the audience to follow what is going on, not trusting the characters, and trying to think, wouldn't it be funny if? That's the worst way to start a creative sentence. Wouldn't it be funny if we have this happen, or wouldn't it be funny if we do this? Because the biggest mistake is not letting, once you devise the comic premise, the big lie that probably could never happen, or might not, probably wouldn't happen, or impossible to happen, like a guy waking up and it's the same day over and over again, or
But that's one of your favorite movies is Groundhog Day.
I know, but one of the reasons it's one of my favorite movies is because once they set up the big lie, everything else develops organically from character.
Right.
Nothing happens in the movie because somebody thought, hey, wouldn't it be silly if this happened, or this would be funny if that happened. Everything happens in the movie that comes from character. In fact, there in one of the earlier drafts, once Bill Murray discovers that he's living the same day over and over again, he decides to test it out. So he shaves his hair into a mohawk, and he burns half the room, and he paints the other half of the room psychedelic colors, and he destroys his room, and he wakes up the next morning, and Sonny and Cher are singing, and it's the same.
Right.
And they shot it, and they looked at it on the dailies, and they thought to themselves, why would this character do that? Why would this selfish, cynical character shave his head into a mohawk? He would never do that. And so at great expense, they reshot the scene. So all he does is he takes a pencil and he breaks it in half, and he puts one half on the floor and the other half on the nightstand, and he wakes up and the pencil's whole, and he knows it's really happening. Because they realized that the movie would be better if they just developed it from character, as opposed to thinking, what's the next funny thing we can do?
Let's put Bill Murray in a mohawk, that ha 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 laugh. Whereas with this character he's playing, he is the type who would just do something, break the pencil and then wait for it. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So you
can look at a film made by your favorite filmmakers, like the Farrelly brothers, and some of their films are great. There's Something About Mary.
Right.
Or some of their films are not so great, like The Three Stooges. And you can look at it and you can see, well, this film is great because, for the most part, I mean, there are some funny things they throw in there because they're the Farrelly brothers. But for the most part, things are happening that makes sense because from the character's point of view, and I believe what they're doing. And then if you look at The Three Stooges, it's like, oh, they did this because they thought this would be funny. And they did this because, that's what the Three Stooges used to do, and they thought that would be funny. And you can see the movies failing or succeeding based upon how well they honored the truth and reality of the character. Because once you've set up in an impossible situation, an unreal situation, you've already got that going for you. In Tropic Thunder, a group of actors are put out into the jungle to make them think that they're really in Vietnam, and the director mistakenly steps on a landmine and gets blown up, and so they're stuck in the jungle and they have to get back. Okay, you've set that up. Now everything else should develop from character as opposed to, well, let's have this funny thing happen, or let's have that funny thing happen.
Okay. Now, in creating, one of the things I noticed in one of the books is that if you follow this pattern of just having character and following them, at one point you write, you don't even necessarily need an antagonist. Whereas most of us were taught that you can't have drama without conflict, that you can't have someone to follow if there's no obstacle in front of them. So what do you mean you don't necessarily need an antagonist?
Well, although there are some comedies that are great and they have villains, for the most part, you don't need somebody who's actively working against your main character, because what's true in life is that we are our own worst enemies, right?
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, we're indecisive. We make mistakes. We then blame somebody else for our own mistakes. We don't need a guy twirling a black mustache to get in our way. One of the things that's clear about just human beings is we get in our own way. So you don't need to create the evil landlord or the bad boyfriend. You don't need to. If you want to, you can. If there's really a call for that, you can. In a sports movie like Dodgeball, you need the bad. You need the evil guy who owns the successful gym, because he's going to be your rival. Okay, that's clear. But there is no enemy, there is no antagonist in Groundhog Day, because he's his own worst enemy. There is no antagonist in When Harry Met Sally, because they're getting in their own way. They can't see what's clearly in front of them, that they're meant for each other. So it's the characters themselves that create the conflict, and oftentimes the conflict comes from the impossible situation married to inept characters, like in The Producers.
Greatest movie ever made, The Producers. Like
one of the greatest movies ever made.
Well, what for you is the greatest comedy ever made for you is?
Oh, it changes with the season, but I have to. I always go back to Producers, Groundhog Day, When Harry Met Sally, 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Well, wait a minute. Let me stop you right there. Because when Harry Met Sally, which is a lovely, I actually just saw it recently again. Delightful film, very amusing, not always laugh out loud funny, but incredibly charming and a sweet film. But you want to talk about truth, and you want to talk about being true to a character and to a situation and having something that the audience believes, okay? The most famous scene in that movie, when they're in the deli and Meg Ryan, or Sally, has the orgasm, she fakes the orgasm.
Right.
Not believable nobody's going to do that in Katz's Delicatessen, no matter how good the pastrami is. It is a fake moment. It's a fake scene. It's more, I've always found it more embarrassing to watch. And one of the low notes in a movie that is otherwise delightful and real. You bought that scene?
Although his mother, sitting at the next table, then says, I'll have what she's having.
That's a topper. That's a great line. It's a great topper line. But the sequence itself is not something that any normal human being, even this proper prim Sally character, would do. Or she'd do it much more quietly, and just for the Billy Crystal character, Harry, than she would for this whole room of people who are sitting there trying to have a meal. You disagree, because your silence is definitely.
I agree. I agree to disagree about that.
Okay.
I think it works because by that time in the film, they have gotten so close to each other. They're such good friends. And remember, the premise of the film is that Billy Crystal starts off by saying, you can't be friends. Men and women can't be friends because they're always have one thing on their mind. But one of the things that the film proves is that sometimes the person who you're closest to, who you love, is your best friend.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so by that time, they are so close. They're so intimate in their friendship, not necessarily romantically, that they're able to do what guys would do in a bar. Because you know that in a bar, guys will get loud and go off and make things. And so one of the things, even though you can say, and I'm not going to dispute you, that that probably wouldn't happen in many cats restaurants. What was truthful about it is how honest they are to each other.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not going to dispute you on that. I will say that the scene would have worked for me if they were just, still as just friends, platonically, having a meal. She was cooking him a meal in her apartment.
Right.
And they had that conversation, and she did that there. I would have been like, oh, and not realizing perhaps that a neighbor next door would overhear and calls from the window, I'll have what she's having. I mean, that would have been believable. It was just not believable to me in public that way.
But it wouldn't embarrass Billy Crystal to the extent if it wasn't in public. If they did that same exact scene in the privacy of their apartment.
Well, yeah, he would have gotten a hard on and jumped on her, actually. That's what would have happened, quite honestly.
They weren't romantically linked at that point.
Doesn't matter. You're a man. It doesn't matter. Come on.
The whole point of the scene is not only how outrageous she's being, but how embarrassed the man, Billy Crystal is. So it's about her embarrassing him in a friendly way. So that's why I agree to disagree with you. There are things that what I call cringe comedy.
Well, that's Ricky Gervais. That's his whole thing is cringe and Borat. Sacha Baron Cohen, they're into that and The Office, all of it, right?
Well, for me, what I mean by cringe comedy is I used to watch. My wife is a huge I Love Lucy fan, and I used to hate the moments in which she would embarrass herself in a way that I would think, oh, why don't you just not do that? Or, so that kind of comedy would make me cringe. But that's subjective. That's why I start off by saying there's a difference between funny and comedy. For you, the most famous scene in When Harry Met Sally isn't funny. And you're absolutely right. For you, It's not funny. But it works as comedy, meaning that it tells the truth about human beings in a very particular way.
Now we're talking, by the way, with Steve Kaplan, who is, by the way, you can find out more about him and take his seminars and buy his books. First of all, what you want to do is go to his website, kaplancomedy.com, kaplancomedy.com. Now, he's doing these comedy intensives. For those of you on the West Coast, he's doing them in March. He's going to do one in London in April. And then, if you can wait for it, in September, he's coming back to New York. And he's going to be doing
I'll be in New York in September. So I think it's going to be the second weekend in September, but we have to try to avoid the Jewish holidays.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. Don't want to be doing this on Yom Kippur.
I will avoid the Jewish holidays.
Yeah. I mean, my character would say, how dare you do this on Yom Kippur? So you're not going to anger me. That's my character.
I know, but on the other hand, your character is doing a podcast on Saturday morning.
Wait, it's Saturday? Oh my shit, my calendar's all wrong. Oh no, what did I do? What can I say? Well, this isn't work. If I were being paid, it would be work. But I'm not paid.
That's true.
I do this for nothing. So, but I do this for the joy of talking to experts and people who are so fun and lively and intelligent as Steve Kaplan, the author of The Comic Hero's Journey and the Hidden Tools of Comedy. But when people go to see your seminars, what can they expect there that they don't necessarily get in your videos or in the book? Are there workshops? Do people write a scene and then you work on it and comment on it? Or is it just you talking with film clips? What is it?
Well, it's a combination of solo writing activities, group writing activities. There is a lot. We do show a lot of clips, and I think one of the things that you get that you can't get just from reading the book is the fact that we break down what's happening in the scene, sometimes almost frame by frame, to show what's working and, more importantly, what's not working. What happens in a lot of screenwriting workshops is they'll show scenes from Casablanca, or they'll show scenes from Citizen Kane, and you go and you look at that and you go, well, yeah, that's great. How could I ever do that? Well, one of the things that I like to do is I like to show you scenes from comedies that are not working.
Like, can you give us an actual specific? I know, not that people aren't going to buy, go into your seminar, but I am curious. What would be a scene in a movie where you can tell just from that scene something is off?
Well, people are not going to know this reference because no one saw the movie, but there's a movie called Alex and Emma with Kate Hudson and Luke Wilson. Okay. And there's the scene in which they meet cute. And what happens in the scene is that he's trying to sweet talk this stenographer into taking dictation for free. So he's the character, the clever, tricky trickster. Okay. And he's the Scapan, if you will. Okay. Yeah. Con man. That's a classic character. And he's giving her a spiel, and she's not buying it. And then he faints at her feet. Why? Why? I don't know. Somebody thought, wouldn't it be funny if? And so what I do is that first, when she appears, when the Kate Hudson character appears, I ask people in the workshop, tell me three characteristics. What qualities is she trying to communicate? And they'll say she's cautious, she's professional, she's intelligent. Okay, and then we show a bit of the scene, and the scene in which he's trying to convince her that it's a law office, and she's not buying it, and then he faints at her feet. And then I stop the scene again, and I say, okay, ladies, what would you do? And some people will say, well, I'll call for help, or I'll just run away because it's New York and it's weird. And so, and somebody will say, well, I'll do something like this. They'll do something funny. And then I'll say, okay, but if you're cautious and professional and intelligent, would you do that? Then they'll go, well, you're right. No, if I was those three qualities, then I wouldn't do that. And then we run the scene and show what the filmmakers did, in which you see Kate Hudson lift the prone Luke Wilson. She picks up his legs. She carries him into his apartment, and she's cracking. She's making wisecracks all the time. And then she's going to leave, and then he gets up and says, "Okay, I haven't really fainted." No wonder that movie sucked. Yeah. And so what I point out the fact that instead of having a real conversation and a real interaction, somebody thought, wouldn't it be funny if we do this silly action? Because people are afraid to not have audiences laugh. They're afraid for that. But if you study film and screenwriting, you realize you can't make audiences laugh if they don't know who the characters are and they don't believe in them. So first you have to create believable characters in a recognizable situation. It doesn't have to be a believable situation, but you just have to recognize what the situation is, and then let it develop organically and honestly. So that's an example where I show how simply being dishonest, not to the premise, but to the characters themselves, how it doesn't help the comedy. It doesn't help tell the story comedically. Although somebody must have thought, well, it's funny to see him faint and then see her kind of carry him into his apartment as though he was a wheelbarrow.
But it's funny, but it's not comedy. It's funny for the moment, but it works against. Somebody must have thought it was funny. Somebody must have thought it was funny, but that's the whole point. Yeah.
Funny is subjective. You laugh at a joke. I don't laugh at the joke. Does that mean that we should have a vote? No. What we should be focused on is, are we telling the truth about those characters at that moment?
Yeah. But also, there tends to be at a certain level, even though this moment is funny, and people have outliers of, oh, I love that film that all the other critics hated, and that the critics think is terrible. But at a certain level, there's also a canon, a pantheon, where a vast majority of people will say, oh, the producers is great. Oh, Groundhog Day. Oh, Some Like It Hot. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. There's a kind of, and which really actually isn't. I mean, it is about character, but that does go for the jokes, and it's still hysterically funny. But there's, at a certain point, there is also some consensus as to what are really terrific, wonderful comedies. Duck Soup, for example.
Right. Although Duck Soup was a big failure when it first came out.
Well, because it's wartime, or it was going to be wartime, but again. Over the years, the consensus was that people didn't recognize it at the time.
Well, I'm not a big. I guess I'm not a big proponent of consensus. I mean, if you look at the 100 funniest films, the AFI list of 100 biggest laughs.
Yeah.
One of the films, kind of down in the 90s, I think, is this Jerry Lewis film.
Oh God, Hardly Working?
No, I think it's the one where he's working in a house full of women, or ladies' man, or something like that, and it's terrible. It's
the French voters love it.
It's painful for me. It's painful to watch. Some people think it's funny, but
okay.
But I'm okay with you thinking something is funny that I don't think is funny, because funny is subjective.
Right.
So my point is always to try to teach writers, don't go for funny, tell the truth.
Right.
People will say to me, but it's, the truth can be boring. And I say, think about your family at Thanksgiving dinner, or around the table at Passover, and it's your drunk uncle, and it's your annoying aunt, and it's your miserable cousins, and think how funny that situation is. Because when you and your cousins get around to talk about it, you're always laughing about your uncles and your aunts and your parents. People are comic. People are funny. That's the way they're built. So if you tell the truth about them,
right,
you're halfway there.
Now,
not all the way there, but you're halfway there.
Let me ask Steve Kaplan. We've been talking so much about movies and story structure and screenplays, but you started more with theater, and you were the co-founder and for a while the artistic director of a theater company called Manhattan Punchline. So tell us a little bit, please, of how that even occurred back in the day when there wasn't even, Theater Row was falling apart. There was nothing going on Broadway. It was before Disney and Giuliani moved in. So how on earth did you suddenly create a theater company?
Well, it wasn't just me. I had two friends who were actors, Mitch McGuire and Dave Kaplan. And I directed Mitch in a play, a really terrible play. He was okay in it, but the play was pretty terrible. But they wanted to start a theater company, and they wanted me to be part of it. And so we got together one day at Curtain Up, which is this restaurant at the base of Manhattan Plaza.
Yeah.
And I pitched them a theater company that was completely devoted to comedy. Because at that time, in the late 70s, theater people took themselves very, very seriously. You went to a small theater off of Broadway, and you were probably going to see a bunch of actors in black turtlenecks acting out in obscure abstract play in which there were no characters' names, just like he, she, the pharmacist, the man with the big pain in his head, and everybody took themselves very seriously. And I wanted to start a theater company that was completely devoted to comedy, because from an early age, I was a comedy nerd. I loved Bob Hope and the road movies, and George Burns and Gracie Allen. One of my most embarrassing moments was I was at a dance at my Hebrew center, my Jewish center, and there was a band, and they asked for songs, recommend a song that we play. And I went up to the band and I said, "Could you play Thanks for the Memory?" Because I was such a big Bob Hope fan. And they looked at me like I was strange, and they were right, because I was a very strange young teenager. So I wanted to start a theater company that was completely devoted to comedy. And I convinced them to do that. Luckily, they came up with the name, because New York Ha Ha Theater would not have been as good.
No, definitely not.
And so we started in 1979, and we ran it for 13 years, which was more times than most convicted murderers get, I'd like to say. And a lot of great people came through it. Young David Crane, who went on to do Friends.
Right.
We had actors like Oliver Platt and Mercedes Ruehl, who went on to win Tonys.
David Ives was a playwright at your...
David Ives, yes. David Ives was one of the playwrights who used to be in our annual one-act play festival. David used to say I was making him famous at 15 minutes at a time. And so a lot of great people came out of it. So
let me ask you the question, though. If you're so many of these, we were talking earlier in the show about the Roundabout Theater, and then there's places like Second Stage where they start small, or the Vineyard, and then they kind of grow. Hopefully they grow, and then sometimes they become bigger and they become serious off-Broadway or even Broadway theaters. But after 13 years, why stop? Why call it quits?
Well, we didn't call it quits as much as we unplugged us from life support.
Sure.
And that was the time in which, when we started, there was this organization called New York State Council on the Arts, and they used to give grants to theater companies like us, and it helped us thrive. And the year before we stopped, that was, I think, Black Tuesday, when Wall Street went bust at the end of the 80s. And New York State Council on the Arts cut our funding by like about 75-80%. And so we never really had a great business structure. We had great art, and we did great work, and we developed great people.
What was your favorite play? Can I ask, what of all the shows that you put on, whether one act or full length, your favorite show that you did at Manhattan Punchline?
Well, I would have to say it was one of the Peter Tolan shows. Peter Tolan, who went on to be the executive producer of the Larry Sanders Show.
Oh, my.
And Peter Tolan had a great show. It was an evening with Wallem and Tolan. It's hard to pick out one, because
Sure.
they're like my children. David Ives had an amazing, a series of amazing plays. Like Sure Thing, which is kind of
that went into All in the Timing later on. He developed those.
Most of the plays from David's All in the Timing were originally produced at the Punchline, and I was a huge fan of Kaufman and Hart, and I guess my favorite play was June Moon.
About the songwriters,
Ring Lardner, Kaufman. It was a 3-act play with great build up, a huge third act. but I also, we also premiered plays like Sleeping Beauty, in which a woman says, I wonder whatever happened to that guy who I knew in third grade, or the guy I saw on the bus. And by the end of the play, there were 50 guys there who were all saying, I love you, Louise. I love you, Louise. I mean, it was a great time. And we had, like I said, plays by Peter Tolan, David Crane,
Right.
David Ives, Nathan Lane was in our late night show. He was part of a comedy team at first.
Wow.
Michael Patrick King, who went on to do Sex and the City. He was in our in-house improv group called Broadway Local.
That's also a great name, Broadway Local.
Right.
But let me ask you then, okay, so you're doing this
so we had to stop because we ran out of money.
So after 13 years, though, so this was essentially your full-time job, right? You were, as artistic director, you're making enough to live, to eat, what?
A full-time job with a part-time salary.
Okay, that's New York. That's the arts. That's what it is. But was it scary then to give that up, or were you able then to just go across the country and people were calling you, hey, stop doing this stuff in New York when there's no money. We need you to punch up this script. We need you out here to write script. Or what happened after? What did you do?
It was scary but I realized that I didn't want to end up like some of the people I knew who were still trying to produce off-Broadway theaters in their living rooms, and I knew those people, and they didn't have clean clothes, but they were still hanging around the scene, and I couldn't be one of those people. So when I knew that the Punchline had to fold, I went out to Los Angeles without a job.
Wow.
And I just thought, comedy. Some people there must be somebody out there who could see the value of that. And I came out to Los Angeles and kind of bounced around for a couple of months, and I finally convinced an old college friend who was working at HBO at the time that I could do something similar to what I was doing in New York, and so we started the HBO New Writers Project, which went for a couple of years until HBO realized, hey, we don't need to do that. The writers are coming to us. But then out of the New Writers Project came the HBO Workspace, which was kind of a live venue in Los Angeles that was helping them pick acts for the comedy festival they were doing in Aspen every year.
Oh, wow.
And now there are several venues in Los Angeles that do that. The Comedy Central stage, I believe, Showtime had a venue for a little bit, and from there, a guy came up to me while I was doing that, and said, I work for Robert McKee, the guy who wrote Story and goes all over the world, and he says, I think you could do for comedy what he does for stories. And I went, really? And so we did it we offered a workshop one weekend in 2004, and it kind of took off from there. And so I started doing workshops in London, in Singapore.
Whoa.
Australia has me out. So I've been around the world doing this.
Well, let me ask you, Steve Kaplan. The one sort of missing piece of the puzzle is you went out to LA. You were in New York. You were directing. You knew comedy backwards and forwards, and you teach, and you're an incredible expert in comedy. Where, and I'm not saying this to be mean, but where is the great movie that you wrote? Where or are you one of those people who can dissect and can point out what's good and bad in other people's writing, but you never got it together to write the great American comic screenplay?
I'm not a writer. I'm a director and a teacher. So I can point to people who I've taught who've written great stuff, but that's not what I do.
Are you still directing? Are you?
I'm not. I've done a couple of small plays in Los Angeles, but that's not what I spend my time on. What I basically do is, besides doing workshops, I'm doing a workshop in March 7th and 8th in Los Angeles, April 25th and 26th in London. I was going to go to Taiwan, but they canceled it because of the coronavirus. So that's the good news, bad news. Bad news, they canceled my gig in Taipei City. Good news, I don't have the coronavirus.
This for now. It's a virus. It spreads. Oh, hold on, one moment, please. We just have a little technical difficulty here. By the way, we're talking with Steve Kaplan, who is clean and healthy. Have you been tested? Are you absolutely sure you don't have the coronavirus?
I'm 98% sure. No one can ever be 100% sure of anything, but I'm 98% sure. So I guess the answer is that not being a script writer, but what I do is I work with a lot of producers and writers around the world in working on story structure and scripts, and I'm a script consultant.
Do you get credit? Because you don't have a lot of credits on IMDb of movies that have come out. Was like, oh, I worked on that, or is it sort of all sub rosa, and you're just doing it kind of, under the radar, as it were?
I'm working for producers or for writers directly, and I'm not working as a co-writer. I'm working as an analyst.
Okay, so can you point specifically? I mean, if you can do this, like to a movie that you improved, like you read the script to something and you saw something in there, and when you saw the movie on screen or on TV, it was like, ha 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 ha! I found that.
Well, I can't do that for most of them because there's confidentiality agreements. But when I was brought out to Australia, I worked as a mentor on several Australian comedy projects, and one of them became Please Like Me with Josh Thomas, which then was brought over to the States and had, I think it was on Acorn or Hulu, had like a four season run. So I helped do that.
All right. Not too shabby at all for Steve Kaplan, who, by the way, has the website kaplancomedy.com. This is a place we'll also lead you to where you can buy, like on Amazon and Goodreads and stuff. His two books, The Comic Hero's Journey.
Although you can buy them directly from me, and I'll autograph them.
I can go. This is good. So right from your website, people can go to kaplancomedy.com, order them from you, and you'll put your Jane Hancock on there?
I will put my Jane or John Hancock, depending upon which kind of binary choice you like.
We just posted that on the watch party thing, so people can click right there. So let me ask you one or two more quick questions for Steve Kaplan here. So what is a comedy movie, that breaks most of these rules, but that you still love, that still works? Maybe like Airplane or something like that? Or
Exactly like Airplane. Although Airplane still tells a story about characters that you kind of, despite everything, you care about. You care about that pilot. Even though he's so ridiculous that people are committing suicide rather than listening to this story. But those kind of comedies where you're simply as good as your last joke, those are hard to pull off.
Very.
Like Airplane. So you take a movie like Scary Movie. And the first time, it's kind of clever the way that they're parodying all the movie genres and all the different kind of scary movies that there been. But by the time you get to Scary Movie 4, it's really only as good as each passing joke. And if those jokes aren't good, and they weren't, you've got nothing. There's nothing there. So those are the hardest movies to pull off, where it's simply a long form cartoon that has no story, no structure, no characters, but jokes. And if the jokes aren't good, then the movie isn't good. And believe me, Scary Movie 4 is not that good.
I couldn't even tell the difference between Scary Movie 3 and Scary Movie 4. Nightmare on Elm Street 8. To me, they're basically the same.
I mean, there are plenty of movies that don't that break these rules, and they're not. And really, I don't call them the hidden rules of comedy. I call them the hidden tools of comedy, because like any tool, you can use a tool to make something good or screw something up. So what I would say is that if you want to see how character and story can combine to make great comedy, look at most Pixar movies. And then if you want to see, well, how does it happen? What happens when it screws up? Take a look at a movie like The Secret Lives of Pets, where basically you have noise for about 2 hours without really telling you a story worth telling or characters worth following.
Well, yeah. Well, we personally, my friend Dave, he owns a dog, and he loves The Secret Life of Pets, the dog favorite movie of all time. But
I loved the first 15 minutes.
Right.
But then because that was The Secret Life of Pets, the first 15 minutes. But after that, they decided, well, wouldn't it be funny if we had a revolutionary rabbit with a gecko and a pig?
Right.
And you can't tell me that story development made Secret Life of Pets better.
You have explained why when I watched that movie, I thought, oh, this is gonna be so much fun. It's gonna be such a great movie. And then by about half an hour in, I was just kind of slogging through. It wasn't painful.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. You are absolutely right about that film. I mean, it explains several other films of that ilk, whether they're animated or not, where, okay, it is watchable, but what happened? I was really getting into this, and now it's just like...
Now it's just noise and busyness, and let's throw things up against the screen and see what sticks, and oh, the kids will love this. The kids will love this.
The kids do love it. I mean, they make a sequel, so they're also not so stupid for making movies like that, too. But in terms of art, in terms of craft...
Well, sometimes people will say, but those movies make a lot of money, and I'll say... And McDonald's makes a lot of hamburgers, but they're not teaching it in culinary schools.
Right. And they're not kosher. God damn.
And they're not kosher. That's right.
Very important thing. We are speaking about the laws of comedy and kashrut with the wonderful Steve Kaplan. We're going to wrap this up, but I want to, again, remind everybody.
Wrap it up. I'm having the time of my life.
Well, I have one more question. I'm not letting you go yet. We're going to go through the full hour, but I do want to... You want me to tell people, first of all, that they can see you in March in Los Angeles doing your seminar. They can see you in London, England, doing the seminar in April. And then in New York, you'll be there in September doing what you do. And to get a Vorspeise, to get a taste of what you do, remember that you can get his books, The Hidden Tools of Comedy, and, of course, The Comic Hero's Journey. All of that available from KaplanComedy.com. And he will, as he said, if you buy it directly from him, first of all, will you give him a discount if they mention me? I doubt it. But the autograph.
I won't charge them any more money.
That's good. There you go. See, that is Jewish character right there. And he'll autograph them as well. Comedy. So,
a little Yiddishkeit.
For the Comic Hero's Journey, our last question for Steve Kaplan is you have this distinguishing thing, and it's fun to hear about, like the difference between the hero in a movie, the Charles Bronson sort of character, versus a comic hero, not an anti-hero, but a very different thing that you call the non-hero. Please explain.
Well, the non-hero, we call it the non-hero, because they lack some of the skills that are required to win. If you think about Charles Bronson or some action hero.
A Clint Eastwood, right?
A Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson,
an Arnold Stang, for example. No,
who's the guy in Fast and Furious?
Vin Diesel?
Vin Diesel. Put Vin Diesel in a room with 12 guys with guns. Who wins? Well, Vin Diesel,
right? Yeah.
Because Vin Diesel is strong and he's got great skills and he's good at combat and armed combat. He's got all the skills. Put Woody Allen in a room with 12 guys with guns.
Or gubs, as he would say. Yeah.
You're laughing. I haven't written one word of dialogue. I haven't written one joke, and you're already laughing because I'm putting a comic character who lacks skills into an impossible situation. Maybe Woody Allen would go, "Don't shoot me! I'm a bleeder. It'll ruin the rug."
Right.
So
that was a pretty good impersonation, by the way. I will applaud that.
Thank you. So a non-hero is somebody who lacks some, if not all, the essential skills with which to win. They don't have to be the stupidest person, but they simply have to lack something. And sometimes, some of the qualities they lack are kindness. Like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, he lacks empathy, right, and sympathy. So if you simply have your character lack a skill, it's not that they're trying to be dumb or they're trying to do the worst thing, but they're simply not able to do some things because they lack the skills. And one of the most important skills that a character needs to lack is the skill of knowing, because that's one big mistake that writers make, is because writers are they're like omniscient beings creating this world. They know everything, and so when they write their protagonists, they're usually identifying with the protagonist, and so they're not stupid, so they don't want the protagonist to be stupid. But what happens is that they have their character know too much, and one of the basic elements of comedy is not knowing, not being necessarily being stupid, but simply not knowing. There's a scene that I show from a Cary Grant movie, and I'll ask people, how would you characterize Cary Grant? And they'll say suave, and sophisticated, and debonair. And I'll show this scene in which Cary Grant in Arsenic and Gold Lace finds a dead body in a window seat, and he opens the window seat, he closes it up quickly, he opens it up again, He's perplexed. He says, "Are you okay?" And he closes it up again. And then the camera shows him confused and bewildered. And I'll freeze frame on that, and I'll say, not knowing turns Cary Grant into George Costanza, because one of the basic elements of drama is that characters have great emotion, but they're never surprised. They're never bewildered. If you have a character in a drama, all of a sudden go, what? That makes it a comic moment.
Yeah.
So a non-hero is simply a character like us who doesn't know stuff. For instance, there was this meteor that came crashing to Earth a couple of years ago. It crashed somewhere in Siberia, and it sent hundreds of people to the hospital, but nobody died. But it really happened. So for all we know, there's a meteor coming straight for Rabbi Sol Solomon.
Yeah.
Right. So for all we know, it's heading right towards you, and it's going to hit you and immolate you.
Where's my umbrella?
You'll be so. Do you think that's going to happen?
My luck, maybe, but no, it's unlikely. It's
unlikely.
Maybe a satellite. Okay, yeah.
Do you hope it doesn't happen?
I kind of do. Yes, I'm holding a Torah as we speak, as depends. Yes.
Okay, so you guess it's not going to happen. You hope it doesn't happen. Are you 100% sure it's not going to happen?
99.99999.
Are you 100%?
All right, I'm 100% sure it's not going to happen.
I don't think you can be 100% sure.
So why are you bugging me with it? Okay, so but what's the point then?
So the point is that we live every 5 seconds of our lives in hopes and guesses.
Oh, okay.
We guess it's not going to happen. We hope it doesn't, but we don't know. But characters in drama, no, they're not besieged by doubt. But in comedy, characters have doubt. They have to have doubt. They have to not know.
Huh. I'm trying to work on this in the sense that, are there characters in drama who are certainly full of self-doubt in a non-comic way? I could probably think of some, but especially in modern drama. But at the moment,
no. I mean, think of a soap opera.
Oh, wow.
In a soap opera, which is kind of an exaggerated form of drama. A character will say, "I'm breaking up with you, Saul," and Saul will go, and Saul will be hurt, and he'll go, "For Steve, right?" But so you Saul could be hurt,
right?
But not surprised.
Yeah.
He'll know something. He'll understand it. Whereas in a comedy, somebody will say, "I'm breaking up with you, Saul," and Saul will go, "Before dinner?" Because maybe you'll get one more meal out of it. Who knows?
I like that. See, that is in character because the food, especially. You're right.
Exactly. So a non-hero is somebody who lacks skills, and one of the basic skills to lack is simply having foreknowledge. Well, allowing yourself to not know. And if you look at sitcoms, if you look at movies, the character who doesn't know is in the center of the comedy.
This is, now we're all more serious because now we know much more about comedy. We are all knowing, not all knowing, but
just think about how much we still don't know.
Oh, well.
So we're still fun.
Well, it has been delightful learning about knowing and not knowing and being and nothingness and Immanuel Kant from Steve Kaplan. Remember that his website is kaplancomedy.com, kaplancomedy.com. That is where you can get his books, The Hidden Tools of Comedy and The Comic Hero's Journey, and also take his seminars. You can also find his videos and his explanations all over the interwebs and YouTube as well. It just remains for me to thank so much Steve Kaplan for the first, more than anything else, even more than the instruction, the fun that we have had talking with him about one of the most joyful things of all, comedy. Steve Kaplan, it just remains for me to wish you a most happy 2020 and much more success and laughs, but a good, not just a momentarily funny laugh to you, but a laugh that is, that builds and turns wonderful all the way from the first page to the very, very last, from the first frame to the last. Steve Kaplan, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Rabbi. I feel very spiritually advanced at this point.
Well, that's certainly not from me, but thank you. Thank you so much, and shalom to you.
Shalom to you.
A little more of Steve Kaplan.
What's my advice to the next generation trying to write their Groundhog Day or their 40-year-old virgin? I guess my advice would be that you first